Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Get in the Driver's Seat. We're telling stories about leadership moments in professional practice. I'm your host, Sandra Beckor, practice management coach at Beckor Management. So today we're talking about how to, and get ready because I know you don't like this word, how to sell without being salesy as a lawyer or other type of professional. And what do we mean by that? Profile building, initial consults, referrals, and introductions. Joining me for this episode is Mark Hunter, an award-winning marketing, branding, and communications executive. Mark has designed internal and external programs that drive adoption and deliver exceptional client experiences. His expertise spans B2B and B2C environments, with particular strength in helping legal professionals translate complex services into compelling messages that resonate with their audiences. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks. So Mark and I met last November, you remember, when we were both panelists at an action-packed program organized by Law Pro and Toronto Lawyers Association. What they didn't teach you at law school. That was the program name. And this is definitely one of those topics. And it's something that I think is even more challenging today in either a remote or hybrid environment. And I remember being impressed with how you, Mark, how you were comfortable just naturally talking about yourself. You didn't sound braggy and you didn't hold back either. Like you talked about yourself appropriately at that program. So that's when the idea sparked for this podcast. So let's start there. That for me is the beginning of this conversation. How can professionals self-promote with ease without coming across as bragging? And so, Mark, what comes to mind for you when I say that?
Well, a lot of it comes down to understanding who you are and who you're speaking with at the time. If you think of some of the biggest lawyers that are out there today, some of the top litigators out there, they're known by reputation. So they didn't have to brag for themselves. They've had other people bragging for them. When you're at your early stage of your career, you don't have that action, that you don't have that capability because you just haven't had the experiences yet. The ability to talk about yourself is also about keeping your ego to the side, right? It's not about, look at me, I'm so great, I've done all these wonderful things. It can be about promoting other people. It can be promoting things that you've talked about, things you've done, but not in a way that's like, I did this, I did this, I did this. Maybe it's a we, maybe it's a how things came about. Maybe it's about, um, moving from we had an issue, worked with a bunch of people, and we came to the resolution. You might have been the one who did all of that work, but by bringing in other people into the picture, it becomes a little less braggy about, yeah, I did. It's to the person hearing it is like, oh, you actually led all that program, and so you can kind of show your sense without actually saying it outright.
That's nice. I've heard people talking about what they do in terms of connection to how it impacts the client. So it's like instead of talking about, oh, we do personal injury law, we actually sit by our client's side while they go through something really, really difficult. Maybe the
Mhm.
most difficult thing they've ever gone through in their whole life. And we become part of their family as they go through it, and they never forget it. Like that's compelling, and it's not
That's
salesy.
right. That's absolutely it's just being a person, right? It's a being human to other people. And obviously you've taken that to the one level of like the personal injury where you're absolutely, it could be a devastating situation. But what if you're a corporate lawyer? That's not devastating to the other side, but the other person has pressures on them as well, right? Their general counsel, the CEO might be on them, the board of directors might be on them. How is this going on? What's this transaction happening? So you have to put yourself in their shoes as well and help them be as successful as they can be. Um, you know, someone told me this years and years and years ago, and it was specifically about us just sending a communication out, but it actually is words to live by. And it's if you think about it as what's in it for me when somebody's actually hearing what you're saying, you might actually change the way you're saying that information out to them because you need to give it to them in a way that resonates with them and that they can actually use the information in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I find that the professionals who do this with ease are the ones who are able to check their agenda at the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, it's not about their ego. It's
Yeah.
about making a resolution for the client.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for bringing up the corporate lawyers because this conversation is about both the B2B and
Mhm.
B2C. And for the listeners who aren't familiar with that terminology, it's business to business, business to consumer. So selling to a corporate setting is very different from like family law, where you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Your audience is completely different. They're a different level of sophistication of what they can understand. If you're going through a family dispute, you're really worried about your spouse, your parents, your children, your finances. It's very, very personal. Where on the corporate side, it's personal in a different way, right? It's about their career. It's about what they're doing, about the people they work with. Um, but you're also dealing with somebody who understands the law potentially, right? If you're dealing with the general counsel, if you're a corporate lawyer dealing with another corporate lawyer, you can share things in a different way. Now, that said, if you're a litigation lawyer and you're dealing with a corporate lawyer, you might still have to change how you're communicating because you're talking about an area of the law they don't understand as well.
Mhm. And I love how you also brought up the feeling of compassion for that client, regardless of whether they're going through a hard time or this is about their career. And that is something they care about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, uh, whether it doesn't matter what type of lawyer you are or what you're doing, but it's about understanding what the other person is going through as well to make sure that you're able to get your point across.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so it's a good start. So let's
Yeah.
talk
Well,
about.
actually, if I was just, if you mind, we can extend that even a little bit more. I remember working with some personal injury lawyers, and one of the things they talked about was they didn't talk to their clients for a year and a half as things just kind of progressed. And if you suffered a personal injury, you're like, why is my lawyer not calling me every week? Why aren't they giving me updates on things? And the lawyer's like, well, I don't have to. There's nothing to say. But they don't understand they need that component. When you're dealing with the corporate side of things, it's a little easier because you can say, when do you want to hear something from me? How often should I be talking to you? Because they have an agenda of their own and know what their pieces are. So again, going back to understanding the audience, it makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and sales isn't just knowing how to promote yourself or, how to close a deal. Sales is also about these processes. Like it's actually really important to get that right. Just
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, again, and this would be on both sides of the business, but you have to be reactive when somebody does contact you, right? If you're a personal injury lawyer, for example, or an estate lawyer, and you use an online tool to have people initiate a connection with you, what's your process to get back in touch with them? They're not expecting you to wait a week, 10 days before you respond to them. They want a response quickly. Um, Similarly, if you're a corporate lawyer and you get a phone call, you better respond to that phone call, right? That could be a referral
Yeah.
coming in. It could be a new client that's coming in. Don't let that sit. Don't let that wait. There's a period of time that people have an expectation they're going to hear from you, or they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. And I have seen clients that their strength in sales, they don't use the word sales. I know what they're doing, but they don't call it sales. But their strength is speedy response.
That's right.
And like literally it's like fire, boom, boom. You emailed me, I get right back to you. And if I don't have time to talk to you, that's okay. I can say that. The next 2 days, I'm in back-to-back meetings. Do you have time on Wednesday?
Yeah, and that's when and you could take that further when you're into a file more, and that's managing expectations, right? So if you're going to be in court all day, do you use your out of office assistant to say, I'm in court all day. I can't get back to you at this point in time. Or, you're out doing something else, you get an email, I can't do this right now, but I'll get back to you in a couple days. Like it's about managing those expectations. And you're right that it is salesy, but you're not actually being a salesperson. You're just maintaining that client engagement.
Correct. And good sales professionals will tell you that's what sales is.
Totally. Totally. This is kind of an aside, but I was ordering a pizza the other day.
Yeah.
And I was on their online tool, and then of course you put in the order and it says we've received your order, and then you could actually watch the profile. We're making your order. Your
Really?
pizza's in the oven. Your pizza's almost ready for pickup. Like it gave you all those little bits along the way. Is it necessary? No. Kind of funny though that it's doing that and it's managing my expectations to know, yes, my pizza's going to be ready to pick up in 15, 20 minutes. Even no, yeah, they told me that. Now I can actually watch the process go along.
That's interesting. And you get that sometimes with parcel deliveries.
Totally.
I think Amazon's changed people's expectations of how well they're going to be serviced.
That's right. Yeah. So how do you take that into the legal environment, right? That's about
Yeah.
again managing those expectations of your client, whether that's using your out of office, letting them know when you'll get back to them. If you have an online tool that's bringing in potential clients, what does the response say once they've hit submit? I'll get back to you within 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever that is. You better maintain that promise that you're creating for yourself.
Hmm. I find one of the other things that builds trust is telling them what you won't do. Like right up front, oh, you can expect this from me, but if you're expecting this, you've called the wrong place. This is not us.
That's right. And we used to joke. I've worked with professionals in different capacities, and one of the things I noticed about lawyers first, say engineers, for example, an engineer would tell you, um, "I can build you this bridge, but I can't design the road that will take you to the bridge. I need to get you a road engineer to do that." A lawyer will say, and I mean this is obviously a bit facetious, but sure, I can do your M&A deal, and I can also do your estate planning, and I can also do your personal injury claim. It does you don't it's the I can do everything mentality. And obviously once you get into the larger firms, they're not going to have that. But if you're a sole practitioner, a small shop, maybe you are saying that. But to your point, if you've never done that personal injury case, don't tell people you can do it, right? Send it to somebody else.
Right. And this is part of the how do you talk about yourself? How do you talk about yourself isn't just what do you do, it's also the and I don't do. And
Correct.
I
Yeah.
know people and I'm happy to refer you and let's just talk about what you really need.
Or
Mhm.
where I can help you. Don't
Yeah.
don't call an electrician when you have a plumbing problem, right? Like it's the same idea.
Okay, so the next step that I wanted to talk about is how do you get comfortable asking for the business from a
Hmm.
prospective client?
Yeah, I mean like that's a problem across all spaces, right? And it does, and even if you're buying a car, for example, right? It doesn't matter what it is you're buying. You need to get to that finish line as a business development or a salesperson, and it's hard. It's not a space that we're typically good at. Um, and the challenge is what's that, when is that point to say I'm going to make the sale? Now, in corporate, if you're doing RFPs, it can be a bit easier. Here's the timeline, right? Especially if you have a client where it's every 2 or 3 years, you're just getting back on the roster. RFP shows up, you fill it out, it's got a bunch of dates in it, you know if you're going to get the work or not get the work. But taking your question is I met somebody at a convention or a conference. We talked for a bit. They're a potential client. I've sent them some material. How do I find out how do I get to that next point of actually signing them up? The point is you have to have a solution for them and they have to be ready to sign that deal with you. So if you've started the process of understanding what their needs are, you've explained how you can do that, then getting them to sign on the dotted line is a bit easier. But it's about that upfront work before they're going to do it.
Hmm. Learning about them, taking that extra time to understand their business, their environment, whatever that means. It could
Yeah.
be reading up about them, it could be asking them a lot of questions, could be visiting their business.
Mhm.
I've seen clients doing really interesting things like mirroring the business of their clients, of their key accounts. So if the client grows and they add a location, then like my client will actually add a location to mirror that,
Yeah,
or add a service, or hire someone to deal with a very specific thing. It's like such a deep partnership, but it is sales because it's impossible to say no to that.
that's right. Yeah, I mean, if you can get that ingrained with a firm or with a company, that's fantastic. You can do that.
Hmm.
But then you're maintaining a relationship. You're not actually asking for new business then, right? Um,
You're right.
unless, of course, you might be doing their corporate work and you want their litigation work, then you are asking. But that's at least broadening the relationship rather than starting from scratch and starting from new. I think what you also know in legal, that sales cycle, that business development cycle, it can be really long. You can be working on somebody for years before you get anything out of them. Um, on the consumer side, less so. If you have an injury, you have an estate issue, then and you're in a small town, if you're the only lawyer in town, it's not. It's a quick sale. Someone picks up the phone, says, "I have an estate issue." You're like, "Okay, let's do this." Now, you haven't had to build a long relationship with that individual, but you've had to build in the community so that they know your name recognition, so that they know to call you, so that there's a whole brand component that's been going on in the background that's not a direct sales perspective. So,
And that sort of creates the readiness for
correct.
that
Yeah.
conversation to happen. And what comes to mind for me, it's just a funny situation with my dentist. He'll always ask me, he's like, "Oh, I see this. You're gonna need this gum surgery." And he knows I'm like, "I'm not. I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
And so his sales pitch is always like, "Well, you know, down the road, if you don't do this, you know what's gonna happen 2 years from now? You're gonna end up with
Yeah.
this much more expensive, much bigger surgery that's gonna hurt, and it's gonna need a much more longer time." I'm like, "Okay, alrighty. All right, I'll book it."
Book it. Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right about how that works. And if we want to take the dentist story a little further, you can be overly touchy with clients or prospective clients as well. I'd gone to a dentist as I was changing, my dentist retired. I needed a new one. So I went to this place. I didn't have a great experience with them, but the number of emails and texts I've got from them over the following months drove me crazy to the point that I had to say, "You're not going to be my dentist. This is not happening. Please stop. I don't need weekly reminders of getting things done." It was the wrong pitch for them to do for me. So understanding your audience and what works for them, it's difficult, but it is something you need to do. It's not a one, yeah, it's not just one for everybody, right? Which is what they were working through.
Yeah, no, I actually think that's an important point, Mark, the number of touch points. The frequency of that touch point,
Mhm.
because it can get irritating and annoying if it's too much. The right frequency is, I don't know, it's like art. You have to know how to hit that right tone for your
Right.
audience, because there's no magic number. It's exactly what you just said. There is no magic number.
No, and it kind of goes back to what you said earlier, like what's in it for me? I have to know the person I'm trying to do some work with. Do they need a weekly push to say, are things going? How are things going? Is it a monthly? Is it a quarterly? How often should I be following up with them? And that's understanding the challenge that they're facing at the time to try and actually keep that sales cycle going.
Mhm. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the other side of sales, which is your network. So
Mm,
asking for introductions, referrals, and not feeling like you're jeopardizing your relationships by asking for for
yeah.
these things. Do you have any stories that you've witnessed or been part of that relate to
Yeah, I
this?
mean, a few things come to mind, and one is you need to have a broad network, but you also want to make sure your network is a solid one. So you want to make sure the people that you're referring work out to, and number one, ideally they can refer work back into you. Obviously, we all want to do that. But number two, they're going to do well by your client or the person you're talking to. Um, I work with a number of different event planners, for example, and it's like you want to make sure the one you work with is going to put on an outstanding event for that client, because then you look good, they look good, the client looks good, everybody looks good. If you provide them with just a random name or somebody you met once, it's not so helpful. Now, actually building that referral network takes time and effort. And one thing I speak about a lot is if you're going to a conference, for example, who are the 2 or 3 or 5 people you want to meet? Don't try to meet all 800 people. Do some digging about who's going to be there. Do some digging about the individuals that you think you can add. If we're talking about referrals specifically, who who matches well with the work that you're doing, and then start to engage with them and find out if you gel, right? Like if if you and I gel, then you and my client will probably gel. If you and I don't gel, there's a chance that that's not going to work over the other way either, right? So it's about building that network of people that are like-minded in the way that they deal with their clients, like-minded in the way that they'll come through for each other. And I hopefully, like I said, ones that you can push work back and forth between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's an element of patience that's necessary to do that well.
Yeah. And in some cases, there might not be work that you can send back to individuals, right? And that
Yeah.
that can happen too, especially in legal, right? There's certain things that just might never come back to you, but you also have to know who you can refer that work to. So, um, for example, is a family lawyer going to refer a big M&A deal to, one of the, or let's say a small one-off lawyer referring a giant M&A file to one of the big firms? That's They're probably pretty happy about that, but how often will that come back the other way? Are they going to have any small files that'll work, and vice versa? So you have to understand who it is you're sending work out to.
And be
And
strategic about cultivating a network that aligns with your business, with your future, and also with your values,
yeah,
because then it
yeah,
really does just work better. It's going to be easier to do this. Um,
absolutely.
Yeah, and you know what I found interesting over the years, I have coached a lot of very successful entrepreneurs. So, professional services, the owners, and they're hesitant to ask for referrals from their clients, or they're hesitant to ask for something, an introduction. And often we'll have a conversation where I'm like, well, how do you feel about telling them where you're at in your business? And this thing that you're now actively growing, these steps that you've taken to build this next step, because to
Yeah.
me it's very exciting what you're doing. And and the thing is that it's very easy to underestimate how much other people want to help you.
Mm.
And
Yeah, you're very right. And since on the referral or even just saying nice things about you, for example, right? Like if you're on, say, the PI space, you'll see Google reviews is a huge thing for them, right? Because it's all about people searching online, or personal injury immigration is another great example of this. They want to have those Google reviews that are over 1,000, over 2,000, whatever that number is, to make sure that they start climbing better. If you're a giant corporate firm, you're not going to ask a client for a Google review to make sure that you show up in Google, but you might ask them for a chambers submission. You might ask them for a quote in that area. And that's a way of getting referral without actually specifically asking them for a referral. You're getting a vote of confidence from these individuals saying, yeah, this was a great lawyer. This was a great experience. This is something that I think could be good for other people. Once you've done that level, you can actually ask them for other things as well. Now it's give and take, right? Like, what is it you're providing for them? I don't think you can well, you can, but it would be awful to just go up to somebody and say, "Can you just tell all your clients what a great lawyer I am?" Like that's not going to work, right? Um, but you can provide them with different professionals that they might need, and then they can provide you with potential other work going each way. Yeah, it's about being a good a good Samaritan, a good human, like sharing what works for you and what then they'll share what works for you back. Like you said, they
Yeah.
want to help you as much as you want to.
Yeah, and often the giving is the way to start it actually. So giving and receiving kind of go together. And if you start with the giving, it just naturally, they naturally respond by wanting to give back to you. You don't even have to ask often. One of the other things I'm remembering that's interesting is, to make this conversation easier, is when I go through a marketing planning exercise, and ask a client to think about the 80/20 rule. So the 80/20 rule is one of my favorite go-tos, and I'm sure you know, Mark, but I'll explain for the audience. It's like, okay, if 80% of your revenue is driven by 20% of your clients, well, then if you want to understand how to build your business in a way that is easier, maybe more fulfilling, more profitable, then you really drill down to, well, who is that 20% of my clients that drove 80% of my revenue?
Yeah.
Really understand them. And then call them. Call them and say, guess what marketing exercise I just did? And I learned that you are my ideal client. And here's why. And because of that, do you know anybody that is like you? Because I want to work with more people like you. And that's a way to ask
Well,
for a referral.
yeah, and it also helps you understand your target market and who it
Yeah.
is you want to work with, right? Because then all of your marketing efforts can be actually aligned to that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The 80/20 rule is a great one. Um, the one part of it that, depending again on the type of practice you're running, that can be interesting is how those clients came to be. Um, were they cold calls that came in? Was it a referral from somebody else? Was it a networking exercise you did? Was it through online searches? Understanding how that came in can actually be enticing for you as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can go so deep with that.
Mm.
And to be careful to not dismiss the root. So if you say, "Oh, well, they came from, okay, a referral." Well, how did you meet that person? And or it came from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is doing great for me. Okay, but how did that happen? Because there
Yeah,
might have been a step before that.
yeah, and if it was a referral, how did you thank the person?
Yeah.
Right? Whether you got the business or not, you should still be making the effort to reach out to the individual and acknowledge your thanks for what they've done for you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so then the next step I've got here is, how do we set up that initial consultation for success? It's initial consultation. You don't want to waste the opportunity. So how do
No,
you
you
set
don't.
it up for success for yourself and for your team? So it may not be you going to the meeting. You can still set up, the
Sure.
process for
Okay. Well, let's start with what we used to do in legal professionals is a lawyer would say, I've got a meeting with X client, put together a package for me about how great I am, how great the firm is, and all the various practices we have. And because I need something to leave behind once I go to that meeting. And that's what we used to do. And it wasn't very effective, but it was what we would do. Now there's a lot more work you're doing in advance. Yeah, I would almost say it's 90% of your work you're done in advance, and then 5% in the meeting and 5% after. So prior to the meeting, you've created that package of what you think is going to work so that you have something prepped, but it's not finalized. You haven't sent anything to them. You've researched what that business is about. You've researched the individual. You have some understanding of the case that they want to talk about. If you can do a deep dive, fantastic. If you can't, at least understand the high level and understand where you add value to that case. So you can share that experience with them. Um, if you have like-minded cases, you're going to be putting that in your package of other things you're going to have. And then the number one thing when you go to that meeting is listen. Not about talking, not saying how great you are. It's about listening to the problem, understanding who the client is, understanding what their needs are. Once you've done that, you can go back, finish off that package that you really want to send them, because they are going to need. Most people want something. tangible once they've done, but you can now have a customized piece of content that's going back to the individual. There's no point in telling them about your tax group or your labor group if they have no need to understand that you have those practices. Talk about the things that matter to them and make it feel like that's something that they wanted.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, Mark. I'm such a big believer in ask questions and listen and then talk about yourself, because then you'll know what to say, what they need to hear. And I have a little story. A client came to me before she was going into a business presentation with a big group. So this was an initial consultation, but it was to a group rather than
Yeah.
to one person. So it felt like a little more pressure. And so it was kind of last minute. She's like, "This is what I've got. What do you think?" And the first thing I said to her was, "Flip it. Start with the end." She's like, "No, but they don't know me. I can't do that." I'm like, "Start with the end. Start with the end and start with, this is what you've told me your problem is. Here's what I understand." And start with sharing examples of other clients where you've actually helped them with that exact problem, and then talk about yourself. And she was like, "Yeah, that meeting went really well."
And that's great. And quite honestly, if you're lucky enough to get the in-person meeting, the person you're meeting with has already got enough about you from that phone call,
Yeah.
Zoom meeting, in person, whatever it is, that they don't need the 30-page bio to say how great you are for all these things, right? A couple paragraphs, because
Mhm.
potentially they need to show somebody else to say, here's who I talked to, this is their qualifications, and this is what matters.
Okay, so let's do one more question.
Sure.
So, do you have any tips or examples about closing the sale?
Well, I think everything we've talked about is about it's getting to the point of closing the sale. The actual asking for the work in in this business is is less of an ask. So like if you think about you're buying a car, you've done some research online, you've gone to a dealership, you've done a test drive, then the person's like, so do you want to make an offer? You ready to make an offer? You ready to close this? We don't do that, right? Our process is we've talked about the issue that the person's dealing with. We've talked about how we can resolve or work with them to get through that issue. We've talked about um, costs. At some point, you probably brought up like this is what the fees are going to be like, and then we're like, there's usually a deadline of some
Yeah.
sort. So then it's like we understand that we have to get this figured out by next week. If you want us to get started, let me know. It's a very soft sell at that point because you've already done all that preliminary work. It's not it's not like I said, like you're buying a car and do you want to make an offer on that whatever vehicle it might be.
I think the deadline is an important part of closing the sale.
Yeah.
And the deadline is sometimes driven by the client, but sometimes driven by you, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're like, "Well, I'm a busy lawyer or I'm a busy architect, and if you want me, I really need to know by tomorrow
Yeah.
because I've got a few other projects I have to commit my team and my schedule.
That's right.
Otherwise, I'll have to wait." And
Yeah.
so that can be part of it. The other part could be that somebody's hesitating because of fees. Maybe you really do click and they really want to work with you, but they're
Yeah.
hesitant because of,
Okay.
and so I think sometimes negotiation tactics are helpful here, like just having a conversation about what really matters to you, and
Yeah.
just maybe we can refine the scope or change something so that we can make this work, or just start with the first step and then, see what happens from there, as opposed to, oh, well, either you take it or leave it kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. And that's part of the discussion points, right? Understanding how much money they have to deal with this, or where the value gets to a point that it's not worth dealing with it, right? I mean, there is that point too. If there's a lawsuit that you can potentially generate X number of dollars, but it's going to cost you Y to do it, is it worthwhile making the effort anymore? And that's a discussion you're having with them as you're going through the process, and and understanding that it's different. You know, it the idea of haggling is one that comes up. I mean, it's a story that it reminds me of, or something that reminds me of a story. My wife and I were in Morocco, and she saw this scarf that she loved, and it was beautiful. And when you did the conversion back to Canadian dollars, it really wasn't very much money. And she's like, I'll take it. And the person who was selling it to us is like, no, you can't have it for that price. And obviously we were tourists. And she says, what do you mean? She says, no, here you haggle. So if I say it's $100, you say, no, that's too much. I'm willing to pay 20. And he said, and then we'll go back and forth and you'll get a price that's fair. And we were just like, we were already happy with the price. It was so different than what we're used to when you walk into a store here. You can't walk to the grocery store and say, you know what, that apple costs too much. Can I get it for half the price? But it was a different way. It was a different way of doing things. But you're absolutely right. When it comes to ease, there often is something you can do to make that work in the favor of everybody.
Yeah, and sometimes the client that's hesitating about fees sometimes just needs a reminder about what the cost of not doing this work will be. And that could be in the corporate setting where, okay, well, if you keep going the way you're going, you're going to potentially face these errors, or you're going to potentially miss something. And what's that going to cost?
That's
They might need that reminder.
Yeah. And on our side of things, as the legal team, there's ways that you can push files down, right? I mean, isn't that the point of every partner, is to push the file down to make more profit out of these things? So there's often ways we can make things work if it's a file they really want to have. And I think that it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You don't want every file, right? You want ones that align with the business that you're building or the work that you're trying to put out.
Yeah. And I mean, there are other lawyers who are doing creative business arrangements where they're just, offering consultations while
Mhm.
someone works with another lawyer because their fee is really high. And and those arrangements still offer value.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there are ways to close. Okay. And anything else that you want to say, Mark, before we close today?
I think we kind of touched on it earlier, but I think when it comes to business development for lawyers, the hardest part for them to get their head around is the patience part. It does take time. When you're trying to build your profile, while you're trying to build your business, while you're building your book, it's not typically something that you instantly have. Now, you'll also find there's a lot of lawyers who have their shingle out and are so busy right away, they miss out on all these other things and it's forget that they actually have to put some effort into their business development to make sure that pipeline stays thick and heavy, right? So you got to be putting in the time even when you have no time.
Yeah. And also, yeah, exactly. Exactly. To remember that even when you are busy, that you still need to keep adding to this process so that when it becomes leaner times, you'll benefit from that work that you did. Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mark, for your time and your insights. This was
Thank
fun
you.
chatting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
And to our listeners, if you are interested in learning more about Mark Hunter, please go to glenmaplegroup.ca. You've been listening to Get in the Driver's Seat, stories about leadership moments in professional practice. I'm your host, Sandra Beckwar, practice management coach at Beckwar Management. Take care, everybody.